What is up, you lunatics? Let us have a little conversation about qualifying. Qualifying can be really difficult at times. Sometimes you just cannot find that extra 10 that you need. So what can we do to help this? Well, first of all, we can look at our setup. What can we do to our setup? We can make the setup more aggressive. What I mean by that is you do not have to keep your tires for an entire hour, which means you can push them harder. And therefore we can make a couple setup changes to give us more grip, but with the downside of increased tire degradation. First of all, you want to increase your camber. Now there are downsides. For instance, this might provoke understeer on your front tires. And if it's really hot outside, it might even cause your tires to overheat, which will lose you grip. That's not good. Secondly, we want to increase the toes a little bit, especially if it's cold. We want them really high. That's gonna give us some scrubbing on the straight, which is gonna increase the temperature of the tire. Increased toe also comes with a couple of downsides, so be sure you don't overdo it. Now, the most important aspect, at least in ACC, is tire pressures. We really want to stay within that threshold of 27.4 to 27.8 or a little higher, but generally around there. I aim for 27.7, and this is usually a good sweet spot. Now you might just think, well, my pressures are 27.7, that's good, but it's not that easy. It also depends on where on track you spot for these pressures. For instance, on Silverstone, you want your tires to be at optimal pressure when entering the back straight. This is gonna give you a little bit of overpressurized tires going out onto the start-finish straight, but when you come into Maggots and Beckett's again, you're gonna have the perfect pressure. On Spa, this is a personal preference, I aim to have at least 27.7 all around before entering Puhan, because otherwise it's just impossible to take that corner. Your right side usually go a little low going in there, and you won't have any grip, you will lose time. Other things you can do to your setup is increasing the rake, which will give you a more oversteery car, which in turn, if you can handle it, will lead to better lap time. This is not always the case. You need to be able to handle the effects of an oversteery car. What you also want to try and play around with is your TC and ABS settings. Now, in ACC, I usually leave the ABS at 3. This is usually a good sweet spot. You can go lower, but there are chances you might lock up. Then your tires are just flat spotted and they're dead. Now the TC setting, however, this depends very much on the track, car, and condition, but you want them as low as possible without you spinning. A lower TC setting will cut out the engine less often, and that will give you more power coming out of the corners. This might give you that last 10 for 2 when doing a qualification. Now the last thing you want to do is lower your fuel, and you're good to go. Now, the amount of fuel you need to take depends a little bit on track and what you want to do. We're going to get into that a little bit more later. Less fuel means less weight, which means more speed, which is why you often don't see overweight race car drivers, which is me. Or I was quite hefty. I know it doesn't look like it, but under that overall, oh, loud heat chunk. There's a lot of pizza in that body, trust me. Now let's talk a bit about strategy. Well, there's usually a good idea to have some sort of general plan when it comes to qualifying. Do you do 1 or 2 stints? Do you go in for new tires, that is? Or do you just stay out there and do your absolute best? Well, this depends a bit on track and conditions. If it's a track like Spa, where you have a very long outlap, you might not even have time to do 2 stints. So putting a little bit of extra fuel in to do an extra lap might be a good idea. Now, on the short tracks, however, like Misano or Solder, where you have all the time in the world to do 2 stints, go for it. Most qualifying sessions today are roughly around 15 minutes long, and if they are, it's always worth it to go in for new tires. This means you can take lower fuel and you're gonna have fresher tires over the course of the entire qualification. This usually means you have about 3 laps, so you have 1 banker lap, 1 flying lap, and then 1 chance to improve, and then you go in for new tires. What is a banker lap, you ask? It is the first lap you set, which is also the most important lap. This is basically your own pace setter. Let's talk a little bit about track evolution. In simple terms, means that the track evolves over time. The more cars to drive around the track, the more rubber gets laid down on the track, the faster you can go. This is especially true when it's raining, because it usually means that towards the end of the session there's less water on the track, which means you can go faster. Therefore, you always want to be the last car to cross the finish line. That's gonna have to be it for today's video. If you like this video, please hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. If you have any suggestions for future videos, please leave a comment down below. Any feedback whatsoever, please talk to me and I will read it. Oh, and don't forget, I stream on Twitch sometimes. The link is here. Or there. I don't know. One of the sites. See you next time. Cheers.